Logan Rourke knew the smell of dying air. It was the scent of ozone, overheated circuits, and the metallic tang of his own recycled breath. It was the scent of his ship, the Vagabond, a broken-down freighter that had once been a war machine. Now, it was just his tomb, drifting in the black ink on the extreme edge of known space. He leaned back in the cracked pilot's chair, the gray light of a distant nebula painting shadows across the cockpit. His face, etched with the memory of plasma fire from the Earth-off-world wars, was grim. The scar that ran from his left temple to his jawline pulled tight, a constant reminder of the day he chose exile over execution. 10 years had passed since he'd seen Earth, 10 years since he'd given an order or taken one. He was done with factions, done with causes, and done with the relentless march of humanity. The void was cold, but it was quiet. A sudden, sharp chirp cut through the low hum of the engines and a priority signal. Logan ignored it. It was probably just another automated guild warning about unregistered mass in a shipping lane he hadn't been near in months. The signal came again, louder this time, bypassing his security filters. It wasn't a guild warning, it was a distress call. He sat up, his body moving with the reluctant efficiency of a dormant predator. He tapped the console, his fingers tracing the signal's vector. The numbers that resolved on the screen made his blood run cold. Virelia 9. It wasn't just a restricted sector, it was a no-fly zone, a void marker on every star chart. Virelia 9 was a forbidden moon, held sacred by the Ravari dynasty. The Ravari, a race of warrior zealots descended from ancient royalty, who still settled disputes with honor blades and viewed all non-Ravari as insects. Ships that strayed too close were said to be vaporized, their component atoms scattered across the sector. The signal was faint, layered under heavy encryption, but the core protocol was unmistakable. Military, ancient, desperate. He should have deleted it. He should have powered down the receiver, turned the Vagabond 180 degrees, and burned fuel until Virelia 9 was just a bad memory. He wasn't a hero. He was just a ghost, and ghosts didn't get involved. But the signal pulsed again. It wasn't just a machine calling. It felt alive. Logan cursed, the word a rough bark in the small cockpit. He slammed his fist onto the throttle, the old engines screaming in protest as they diverted power for the jump. He hated himself for it. He hated the pull of a fight he'd sworn to abandon. But most of all, he hated that after 10 years of running, the soldier inside him still answered the call. The entry was violence. Virelia 9's atmosphere was a churning vortex of electric purple storms. The Vagabond was too old, its shields too weak. Static screamed through the hull, frying secondary systems one by one. Alarms blared, a chorus of imminent death. Logan fought the stick, his knuckles white, muscles straining as he tried to glide the dying freighter rather than crater it. He saw a patch of dark desert between the jagged glass-like mountains and aimed for it. The ship hit the ground at a shallow angle, a terrifying multi-second screech of tearing metal as it gouged a trench in the violet sand. Then impact. The world went black. He awoke tasting copper and smoke. His head felt like it had been split open. The cockpit was a ruin, shattered view screens showing an alien sky boiling with purple clouds. He unstrapped, grabbed his pulse rifle from the rack, and kicked open the twisted hatch. He fell to his knees on the sand, the air thin and sharp, smelling of sulfur. A metallic clank-scrape noise made him freeze. He rolled behind a chunk of his own landing gear, rifle up, 3 of them. They weren't Ravari. They were mechs, but not military. They were scavenger units. Patched together with hides and bone, rusted metal limbs ending in pincer claws, tribal. They advanced on the wreckage, plasma torches igniting. Logan didn't wait to ask questions. He wasn't a soldier, but the training was bone deep. He sighted the first one's optical sensor. Fired. The mech staggered, blind. He put 2 rounds into the hydraulic joint of the second one's leg, toppling it. The third spun, spraying wild plasma fire that slagged the vagabond's hull. Logan moved low, flanking it, and fired a single perfect shot into the unshielded power core on its back. The mech exploded, raining shrapnel. The other 2, disabled and blind, left for the storm. His locator, miraculously, was still functional. The distress signal was close, very close. He moved through the churning twilight, rifle ready. The landscape was brutal, all sharp edges and purple shadows. He followed the ping into a fissure between 2 mountains of black, obsidian-like rock. It led him to a cave mouth, half hidden by shimmering silica glass shards. He stepped inside, and his breath caught. The cavern was vast, but it wasn't rock. It was a geode the size of a cathedral, lined with massive light-absorbing amethyst crystals. The air was still, and the only light came from the pulsing purple sky outside, refracting through the facets. And in the center, lying on a bed of crushed crystal dust, was the source of the signal. She was Ravari, taller than a human woman, with a slender, powerful build that was evident even through the rips in her dark, ceremonial armor. Her hair was stark white, fanned out like silk against the dark crystals. Her skin was a pale, luminous indigo. She was bleeding from a deep gash in her side, a dark blue blood staining the crystals. As he got closer, he saw her skin wasn't just reflecting the light, it was emitting it. A faint bioluminescent pulse, like a deep-sea creature, that rose and fell with her shallow breathing. He recognized the face from intelligence briefings a decade old. Princess Kalyra, a fiery radical, even by Ravari standards. She was unconscious, her features relaxed, yet still conveying an aristocratic severity. He knelt, checking her pulse. It was faint. He pulled a medical sealant from his belt pack, his hands moving with practiced calm. As he applied the sealant to the wound, her eyes snapped open. They were violet, not just purple, but a deep, burning, intelligent violet. And they were filled with immediate, undiluted hatred. Her hand shot to the empty sheath at her hip. "Where is my blade? Ape!" Her voice was a low, melodic hiss, stinging with contempt. "Easy." Logan raised his hands, showing them empty. "I'm not the enemy. All non-Ravari are defilers." She tried to sit up, her body rigid with pain and pride. "You pollute this sacred ground. Give me my blade, so that I may cleanse your filth from my sight." "I answered your distress signal," Logan said, his voice a low gravel. "You're welcome." "I sent no signal." She looked around, her gaze sharp and analytical, taking in the cavern, the sealant on her side, and him. She recognized his ragged fatigues. "You are the Earth off-world military. I smell the Krellick's campaign on you. You are a butcher." "I'm just a man," he said, weary of the title. "And right now, I'm the man who patched that hole in your side. My ship is scrap. Yours?" "Gone," she spat. "Ambushed on my own. They left me for the Guardians." As if summoned by her words, a deep vibration shook the cavern. Dust sifted from the crystalline ceiling. The sound was low, a rhythmic thump, thump, thump that Logan felt in his teeth. Kalyra's eyes widened. Her regal fury was replaced by a flash of primal fear, and her bioluminescent skin flickered. "It is here." A shadow blotted out the light from the cave entrance. It was massive, a nightmare of obsidian shells and segmented legs. A Varelian sand beast, a planet-bound leviathan uncoiled its head, dripping acidic saliva that sizzled on the crystal floor. It bellowed, a sound of crushing rock. Kaelira grabbed a sharp shard of amethyst, bracing herself for a final, hopeless strike. Logan moved. He didn't think so. He shoved her back into a recess in the wall. "Stay down!" He stepped forward, pulse rifle snapping to his shoulder. The beast lunged, its maw opening. Logan didn't fire at the impenetrable shell. He fired at the cavern ceiling. His shot struck a massive, hanging spire of amethyst directly above the beast. The crystal, already weakened by the creature's bellow, cracked. With a groan that shook the mountain, the spire tore free. It fell, a spear of purple glass weighing 20 tons. It slammed into the sand beast's midsection, pinning it, crushing its carapace. The beast shrieked, a deafening, wet sound, and thrashed, its acid spraying wildly. "Now!" Logan grabbed Kaelira's arm, hauling her to her feet. He dragged her toward a narrow side fissure as the thrashing beast brought the rest of the cavern roof down in a catastrophic avalanche of crystal. They burst out into the violet storm, tumbling onto the sand, choking on dust. The cavern entrance was gone, buried under thousands of tons of rock. Kaelira stared at him, breathing hard. Her hatred was still there, but it was now complicated by a grudging, infuriated respect. "You are faster than the other apes, and you trust slower than most species. We need shelter. My ship's gone. Yours is gone. What's the plan?" She looked away, her pride stinging. "There is no plan. I am exiled." Logan let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Great. So we're just two castaways on a death moon. Where's your evac?" "There is an emergency cache," she finally admitted, her voice tight. "An old Dynasty escape pod, 2 kilometers north in the Spine Rock. I will allow you to escort me. After that, your presence is no longer required." "Sure." Logan racked the slide on his rifle, checking the charge. "I'll just whistle for a cab." He started walking. "North, you said." The escape pod was an ancient model, a relic from a forgotten war, jammed into a crevice of black rock. The storm had passed, leaving the twin moons of Aurelia to bathe the desert in an eerie silver and blue light. The pod's systems were minimal, but the hull was intact. The heater, however, was broken. They sat in the suffocating silence. The pod was built for 1 occupant, forced to host 2. It was freezing, the metal bulkheads leaching warmth from their bodies. They sat opposite each other, their knees almost touching. Logan had taken the seat by the hatch, giving her the relative security of the rear bulkhead. He field-stripped his rifle, the methodical, sharp clicks of metal on metal the only sound. Kaelira watched him. This human was a profound anomaly. He was clearly a hardened warrior, a veteran of the wars that had scarred both their species. Yet he had not stared at her. He had not made demands. He had not tried to bargain for her life or her body, which many lesser species would have seen as his right by salvage. He just sat, in the intense cold, her body's natural bioluminescence, usually kept under disciplined control, pulsed brighter. It was the only light inside the pod, a soft indigo glow that cast moving shadows across Logan's scarred face. He looked up, his work finished, his eyes met hers. The air in the tiny capsule became heavy, charged. It was the first time they had truly looked at each other without an immediate threat. He saw the fierce intelligence in her violet eyes, the aristocratic pride that refused to break. She saw the profound exhaustion in him, the banked embers of a man who had seen too many worlds burn. His gaze dropped, respectfully, down to the rifle in his lap. But she had seen the flicker of heat in those gray eyes, and he had seen the involuntary pulse of her light as she registered his proximity. She was, by any species standard, magnificent, and he was, to her, dangerously different. "You should rest," Logan said. his voice a low rumble. He turned, presenting her with the solid wall of his back. "I'll take the first watch." Kalira leaned her head against the cold metal, but she did not close her eyes. She watched the rigid line of his spine, a man holding himself perfectly still, offering her a warrior's respect. It was more confusing and more unsettling than any aggression. "They will hunt me," she said, her voice quiet, addressing his back. Logan didn't turn. "Who?" "My cousin, Varaios." The name was venom. "He has seized control of the Ravari dynasty. He is the one who ordered my assassination." Logan turned slowly, his face shadowed. "I thought you were royalty. Why?" "I am true royalty," she countered, her light flaring with anger. "He is a usurper. Our people are dying. Human. Our traditions keep our honor pure, but our resources fade. Varaios believes the only future is collaboration." "Collaboration? With who?" "Your people." The words were an indictment. "The Earth's corporatocracy. He plans to open Varelia 9, to sell our sacred ancestral tech, our relics, our very soul, in exchange for fuel and trivial resources. He calls it peace. I call it desecration." "And you opposed him," Logan stated. "It wasn't a question." "I challenged his claim before the High Circle. For that, he labeled me a traitor and set his royal trackers upon me. I fled here, to this forbidden moon. I was seeking proof, something to stop him before the interplanetary summit." Logan scrubbed a hand over his face. This was exactly the kind of mess he'd spent 10 years avoiding. War, politics, betrayal. "So you're not just an exile. You're a political target on the run." "I must reach the ruins of Orinth," she pressed, her voice urgent. "There is an ancient data archive. If I can retrieve the records of the First Dynasty, I can prove his treason to the High Matriarch herself." Ruins, trackers, and one busted-up veteran with half a charge in his rifle. Logan looked out the small viewport at the cold alien stars. "The odds aren't great, Princess." "You saved me from the sand beast," she said, her violet eyes locking onto his. "You did not have to. Do it again. Get me to Orinth. I can promise you compensation, riches, a ship." "I don't want compensation," Logan said quietly. He turned back to the viewport. "But I really hate corrupt politicians." They moved at dawn. The ruins of Orinth were a forest of black basalt skeletons, impossible towers that clawed at the violet sky. They moved through silent, wind-swept courtyards and shattered temples, their footsteps the only sound. "Your people built this?" Logan asked, his hand touching a massive wall carved with intricate, unknown star charts. "The First Dynasty," Kalira said, moving with a fluid grace that defied the treacherous terrain. "Before the Great Silence, there were more. They understood the currents of the void. They were connected to the planet. And Varaios wants to sell all this for spare parts. He sees only credits. He does not see the soul." As they navigated a collapsed observatory, Logan caught her staring at him. It wasn't the first time. There was a strange analytical intensity in her gaze. "What?" he finally asked, stopping. She hesitated, a rare sight. "You fight well, but you are simple." "Thanks, I think." "No," she frowned, searching for the human words. "You have no implants, no ocular enhancement, no neural lace, no combat stimulants. You are pure." "I'm just poor," Logan corrected. "Augmentations cost credits. I left the service in a hurry. It is rare. Even our lowest castes have stabilization implants." She stopped, her gaze drifting to a faded mural of a comet. "There is an old prophecy, a foolish child's story. That in our darkest hour, when the dynasty fragments, a savior would come. Let me guess, Logan said, a dry, cynical edge to his voice. A stranger of flame? Kalira's head snapped toward him, her shock visible. Her bioluminescence flickered. You know about it? I know the tavern version. Every frontier grunt knows it. A ghost warrior from the void, wreathed in fire, who will unite the Ravari. It's just a story. Princess. Propaganda. Perhaps. She touched the mural, her finger tracing the comet's tail. But the prophecy says he will be the unmarked, a warrior of great raw skill, yet free of the great machine's taint, free of implants. She looked at him. Like you. Logan shook his head, uncomfortable. I'm not your savior. I'm just a guy trying to get off your moon. Of course, she said, turning away abruptly, her pride stung. It is a foolish legend. But as she walked ahead, he could see the rapid, unsteady pulse of her light. They found the archive entrance beneath the broken statue of a Ravari ancestor. It was a vast chasm, crossed by a narrow 1,000-year-old bridge of fused black glass. They were halfway across when the trap sprung. From the shadows of the colonnades on both sides, they emerged. 6 of them. They wore the sleek black and silver armor of the royal trackers. They were silent, tall, and carried energized plasma pikes. They fanned out, cutting off the exit and the entrance. The leader, a massive male with scars etched across his exposed jaw, stepped onto the bridge. His armor was heavier. His pike hummed. Kalira, the exile. By the blood oath of Varaios, you are summoned for cleansing. Logan raised his rifle, the charge indicator flashing a weak amber. Stay back. The leader ignored him as if he were a talking rock. His eyes, cold and dark, were fixed on the princess. Do not make this painful. I will not return, Kalira shouted, drawing the crystal shard she'd taken from the cavern. But her voice trembled. This was it. The end. Her mission, her life, her people, all failed. She began to shake, her breath catching in her throat. Her eyes wide with a despair so deep it punched Logan in the gut. She wasn't a princess. She wasn't an alien. She was a terrified woman about to be captured and killed by her own people. Logan saw the trackers tense, gripping their pikes, readying for the final rush. He saw Kalira's hand, white-knuckled, ready to die. He stepped slightly, his body shielding hers. He didn't look at the trackers. He looked at her, forcing her violet eyes to meet his. Hey, he said, his voice soft, rough with authority. It's okay. I've got you. And without thinking, without knowing the customs driven only by a raw human instinct to protect and to calm, he reached out his scarred, unaugmented hand and gently patted the top of her head. Just once. A simple, reassuring gesture. The universe stopped. The wind died. The hum of the plasma pike ceased. The 6 elite trackers froze solid. Their eyes, visible through their dark visors, went impossibly wide. Kalira, beneath his hand, became rigid as stone, her entire body locked. The bioluminescent light that was her skin, which had been pulsing with fear, flashed a brilliant, blinding white, like a camera flash in the dark, and then vanished, leaving her pale, luminous skin suddenly dull and opaque. She stared up at him, her mouth slightly open. Her violet eyes were filled with an emotion he could not possibly name. It was not fear. It was not a relief. It was a shock, terror, awe, clang. The lead tracker's plasma pike fell from his slack grip, bouncing on the ancient glass bridge. Clang, thud, clang, one by one, as if their limbs had been cut. The elite, hardened warriors dropped their weapons. Then, as one, in perfect, terrifying synchronization, all 6 soldiers dropped to one knee. They bowed their heads, pressing their armored fists to the glass floor. Absolute silence descended on the ruins of Orinth. Logan stared, his hand still hovering in the air near her head. He looked at the kneeling warriors. He looked at the discarded weapons. He looked back at Kaelera's stunned, pale, beautiful face. "What?" Logan whispered, utterly confused. "What just happened?" Kaelera did not move. She remained frozen under the phantom weight of his touch. Her violet eyes locked on his, her skin now a flat, lusterless pale. The silence on the glass bridge was absolute, heavier and more profound than the vacuum of space. Logan slowly, cautiously, withdrew his hand. He felt the static charge of her hair dissipate from his palm. "What is happening?" he asked again, his voice a low, urgent command. The lead tracker, still on one knee, kept his head bowed. "Forgive our intrusion, Lord Consort. We did not know." "Lord Consort?" Logan looked at Kaelera. Her breath returned in a shaky, sharp inhale. The color, the vibrant bioelectric pulse, rushed back to her skin in a wave, turning the pale indigo into a flush of deep, burning violet. She looked from him to her kneeling guards, her expression a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. "Rise!" she commanded, and her voice was a full octave higher than usual, tight with an emotion he couldn't place. The trackers stood, but they did not retrieve their weapons. They kept their eyes averted from her, and even more so from him. They seemed terrified. "Gather your weapons, we are leaving!" Kaelera snapped. She turned and marched across the bridge, her armored boots striking the glass with sharp, angry clicks. She did not look back at him. Logan grabbed his rifle, the low-charge indicator blinking uselessly, and followed. The trackers fell in behind him, forming a new, deeply respectful perimeter. They weren't captors anymore. They were an honor guard. They reached the tracker's ship, a sleek Ravari interceptor hidden in a nearby canyon. It was fast, advanced, and utterly silent. The lead tracker opened the hatch and bowed, gesturing for Logan to enter first. "No," Logan said, "she goes first." The tracker looked confused, almost pained, as if Logan had violated a new rule he was just learning. But he bowed again, deeper. "As you command." Kaelera shot Logan a look of pure fire, a look that said, "What have you done?" before disappearing inside. Logan followed her in. The cockpit was designed for two, but the passenger bay was small. The 6 trackers squeezed into the back, standing shoulder to shoulder, rigid as statues. The ship launched a burst of silent, inertialess thrust that pinned Logan to his seat. Kaelera piloted the craft with fierce, jerky motions, her hands tight on the controls. "Where are we going?" he asked in silence. "Away," she said. "Away where?" "Your mission. The archive." "The archive is compromised. My cousin's forces are surely swarming the ruins by now." She banked the ship hard, exiting the purple atmosphere and into the black. "We need a place where Ravari jurisdiction is meaningless. A place where I can think." She set a course for the Krelix Null system, a dead sector known for only one thing: the Gyre. The Gyre was a floating marketplace, a sprawling, chaotic metropolis of lashed-together freighters, ancient generation ships, and hollowed-out asteroids. It orbited a dead, collapsed star that gave off no light, only a faint gravitational pull. The entire station was lit by 1 billion competing neon signs, holographic advertisements, and plasma flares from welding torches. It was a haven for smugglers, bounty hunters, and exiles. It was perfect. Kaelera docked the interceptor in a private, high-security bay, paying the dockmaster with a single, flawless Ravari gemstone that made the creature's multiple eyes widen. She ordered her trackers to remain with the ship, to guard it with their lives. They bowed, their devotion absolute. She led Logan through the crowded, narrow corridors of the marketplace. The air smelled of synthesized protein, alien spices, and unshielded fusion cores. Creatures of a dozen species shuffled past, haggling, yelling, and trading. Kalyra, even in her torn armor, walked through the crowd like a queen, her innate nobility parting the rabble like a ship's prow. She secured a small, private room in a fortified residential spire, one that required a genetic key for entry. The room was sparse, containing only a purification unit, a bed, and a large viewport looking out onto the chaotic, silent swirl of the gyre. The only light came from the endless neon flashing outside. Kalyra stood at the viewport, her back to him, her arms crossed tightly. The silence stretched. "Okay," Logan finally said, leaning against the far wall. "I'm patient. But you're going to have to tell me what that was back on the bridge. Lord Consort?" She turned, her violet eyes electric in the flickering light. "You have no idea what you did. I was trying to keep you from panicking." "Panicking?" She laughed, a short, bitter sound. "I was preparing to die for my dynasty. You interfered. I interfered and saved your life, and your new fan club." "They are not my fans," she snapped, her light pulsing. "They are my royal guard, and you performed the Kalenvor, the head touch." Logan frowned. "What?" "It is an ancient gesture, a sacred rite. It is not reassuring." She spat the word like it was poison. "It is a gesture of absolute dominance, of claiming." "Claiming? Like property? Like a consort?" She began pacing the small room, her energy too large for the space. "It is a ritual gesture used only by the ruling bloodline during the most sacred courtship rites. When a Ravari sovereign chooses their mate, they perform the head touch in front of the high circle. It signifies that the consort is claimed, protected, and owned. That their mind, body, and soul now belong to the sovereign." Logan felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. "So I claimed you. You, an outsider, an unaugmented human ape," she said, her voice dripping with a mix of fury and something else that sounded like horrified awe. "You placed your hand on my head, a gesture forbidden to any being not of sacred blood, and you did it in front of my elite guard. I didn't know. That is what makes it so much worse. It was an act of such profound instinctual dominance. You did not ask. You did not hesitate. You simply took." She stopped, looking at him. "And I froze. In our rights, if the claim is rejected, the consort must strike the sovereign. If they accept, they do as I did. They submit to the touch. You didn't submit. You were scared. It does not matter." She slammed her fist against the bulkhead. "They saw it as submission. They saw you, the stranger of flame from the prophecy, the unmarked warrior, claim the exiled princess. In their eyes, you are now my bonded ruler, and I am yours." Logan processed this. "So tell them it was a mistake, a human custom. Tell them I'm just an ape." "And say what?" she demanded. "That I, a princess of the first dynasty, was claimed by an ape and then retracted the claim? It would be the ultimate humiliation. It would declare me and my bloodline unworthy. My cause would be over. My honor, and the honor of my ancestors, would be dust. Varios would not even need to kill me. I would be a laughingstock, a ghost." She slumped onto the edge of the bed, her head in her hands. The fight had drained out of her, leaving a chilling vulnerability. "So this is a problem," Logan said. "This is a catastrophe," she whispered. "Or it is a weapon. I do not know which." She looked up at him, her gaze sharp. "My guards now follow you as much as they follow me. They believe you are a sacred figure. We must maintain the illusion. Until I can expose Varaios, we must play this part. Logan met her gaze. Play what part? The part of a consort and his sovereign. She stood, her bioluminescent skin pulsing slowly, rhythmically. They will be watching us, Logan Rourke, for any sign of weakness, for any sign that the claim is false. She took a hesitant step toward him. You need to do it again. What? Touch me, she whispered. Not here. She pointed to the top of her head. That is the public right. I need them to expect us to be bonded. And the bond is not just symbolic. She stepped closer, until she was standing directly in front of him. He could feel the heat radiating from her skin. My people, we are sensitive, she said, her voice dropping, becoming intimate, hypnotic. Our skin is not just flesh. It is a network, bioelectric, psychic. When we are close, we feel things, emotions, intent. She looked up at him, her violet eyes wide and searching. Your touch on the bridge was like a lightning strike. It hurts, but it was what? It felt true. She was lying. She was telling the truth. She was doing both. I need you to touch me again, Logan, in private, so we can understand the bond, to maintain the illusion. She was asking him, but it was clear she was also terrified, and just as clear she wanted it. Logan stood still for a long moment. He was a soldier. He understood chain of command. He understood tactics, and he understood survival. This was all of those things, wrapped in a layer of alien mysticism he couldn't begin to fathom. But he also saw the woman beneath the princess, a woman walking a razor's edge, using the only weapon she had left. Him. Where? He asked, his voice rough. She, slowly trembling, lifted her hand and pointed to her face, her temple. He raised his hand. It was scarred, calloused, and a killer's hand. He saw it hesitate in the air between them. He felt her flinch, expecting a blow or perhaps the same shocking dominance as before. Instead, he was gentle. He rested his fingertips against her temple. The reaction was immediate. Her eyes closed. A soft, breathless sound escaped her lips, and her skin, which had been a dull pulse, suddenly flared to life. Bright, bioelectric light, the color of a supernova, raced from his fingertips, across her face, down her neck, and under her armor. She glowed. Logan, she breathed, and then he felt it. It wasn't a voice. It was a feeling. A sudden, overwhelming wave of awe, and beneath it, a sharp, piercing spike of pride, and under that, a vast, cold ocean of fear. It was her. It was all her, pouring into him. He pulled his hand back, shocked. Her eyes snapped open, wide and luminous. You felt it. Your emotions, he said, his voice unsteady, and I yours. Her gaze was intense. You are so quiet, so empty, but there is a core of honor. Before he could process this, she surged forward, and she rose onto her toes, grabbed the front of his ragged fatigues, and kissed him. It was not a gentle kiss. It was a kiss of desperation, of fury, of claiming him back. Her lips were hot, and the moment they touched him, the bond exploded, and it was not just fragments. It was a torrent. He felt her rage at Varaios, her crippling fear of failure, her deep, aching love for her lost people, and woven through it all, a sudden, sharp, undeniable spike of desire for him. He, in turn, could not stop his own response. She felt the iron wall of his control, the decade of banked loneliness, the sudden, protective rage he felt for her, and the stark soldier's desire that her kiss ignited. Kalyra moaned against his mouth, her body pressing into his, her light pulsing against his chest, a radiant, rhythmic throb. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her tight. his soldier's instincts and his man's needs blurring into a single, undeniable act of possession. She pulled back, breathing hard, her lips swollen, her eyes blazing. The partial bond was forged. A thin psychic thread now tethered them, humming with a low-grade static of each other's feelings. "Now," she whispered, her voice shaking but resolute. "Now they will believe." Back on Ravari Prime, in a cold basalt tower, Prince Varaios smiled. He sat at a polished obsidian table. Across from him sat two humans, dressed in the severe, dark suits of Earth's corporatocracy. "The relics from the Orinth ruins are potent," the female diplomat said. Her fingers steepled. "Our scientists are very pleased. They are mere trinkets," Varaios said, his voice a smooth, contemptuous purr. "The price for them, however, is not. I have delivered the technology. You will deliver the resources, and you will formally recognize my claim at the Trinaxis Summit. The summit is intended to forge peace. Prince Varaios," the male diplomat said, "peace is merely the exercise of power without the mess of plasma." Varaios replied, "My cousin Kaelira believed in honor. She is now, presumably, dust on a forbidden moon. I believe in results. You want our relic tech to fight your worthless alien wars. We want your fuel to stabilize our power grid. It is a simple trade. Do not complicate it with morality." "And your cousin?" the woman asked. "If she is not dead, she will be found. The summit will proceed, and my ascension will be absolute." The orbital city ship Trinaxis was a jewel of corporate engineering. It was not a station, it was a floating utopia, designed to host the most elite diplomatic functions in the sector. Its arrival for the summit was heralded as a new age of peace between the isolated Ravari and the expanding human territories. Logan and Kaelira slipped aboard not as royalty, but as cargo. They used the tracker's interceptor, broadcasting false diplomatic credentials, and blended in with the thousands of aides, security details, and servants flooding the station. Kaelira had traded her armor for a disguise, a stunning floor-length gown of deep violet fabric that clung to her luminous skin. Her white hair was bound in intricate silver rings. She looked every inch the aristocrat. Logan, by contrast, wore the anonymous gray uniform of a hired bodyguard. "This is madness," Logan muttered as they walked through the opulent zero-gravity grand concourse, where diplomats floated like exotic fish. "This is politics," Kaelira corrected. "Varaios is here. The humans he is trading with are here, and the proof I need to stop him is here." She had a new plan. The archive on Varelia 9 was a lost cause, but the Trinaxis mainframe held the shipping manifests, the illegal trade agreements, the entire conspiracy. She just had to get to it. They attended the opening gala, a glittering affair in a vast biodome overlooking a nebula. Kaelira moved through the crowd with predatory grace, a glass of shimmering liquid in her hand. Logan stayed 2 paces behind her, his arms crossed, scanning the crowd. The connection between them was a low, constant hum. He felt her focus, her tension, and a strange, thrilling pulse of excitement. A corpulent human diplomat, his face ruddy with drink, cornered her by a fountain. "My dear, you are the most exotic creature here. A Ravari noblewoman, unescorted? How daring!" Kaelira smiled, a slow, dangerous curving of her lips. "I am never unescorted." She glanced back at Logan. "I have my pet," the diplomat chuckled. "Your bodyguard? He looks rather grim." Kaelira reached back, not looking at Logan, and ran one long, elegant finger down his chest, tracing the zipper of his uniform. Logan froze, his entire body tensing at the public, intimate touch. Through the bond, he felt her amusement, sharp and bright. He is not grim, Kalira purred, her eyes still on the diplomat. He is simply loyal, utterly. He does exactly what I tell him to. Do you not, Logan? The use of his name was a warning and a promise. Logan met her gaze. He saw the game. He reached out, took her hand, and brought it to his lips, kissing her knuckles, a gesture of pure feudal submission. Always, my lady. The diplomat's eyes widened, intrigued by this display. Kalira's smile widened, but her return pulse through the bond was a wave of pure heat. Excuse us, she said to the diplomat. I must attend to my pet. He grows restless. She led him from the party, her hand in his, and did not stop until they were back in their small, sterile quarters. The moment the door hissed shut, she turned. The playful, aristocratic mask was gone. Her eyes were dark with an intensity that matched his. That was a dangerous game, he growled. It was a necessary one, she whispered. She stepped toward him. But it is over now. She stopped in front of him, and then, slowly, she knelt. Kalira. Stop. Logan reached to pull her up. No. She looked up at him, her violet eyes shining with a frightening combination of pride and surrender. You do not understand. On the bridge, you claimed me. In the market, we bonded. But you do not yet understand submission in my culture. It looks like kneeling, he said, his voice tight. It is not a weakness. It is trust. My skin, my mind, they are open to you. But the deepest parts of me are still guarded, shielded by instinct and by blood right. She reached up, taking his hand. Submission is the final key. It is the act of willingly, completely lowering those shields. It is giving you my mind. She guided his hand, not to her face, but to the pulse point on her throat, where her skin was thinnest, her light the brightest. You called me your pet, he said, his voice low, and you kissed my hand as a servant. Her light was pulsing fast, matching her heartbeat. We both wore masks. This is the truth. Show me you are my consort. Logan, show me you are not just a brute. Show me you are a ruler. He didn't move for a second. Then he sank to his knees. So they were face to face. He put his other hand on her waist, pulling her closer. I am not a ruler, he whispered against her lips. I am just a man. You are my man, she breathed. He kissed her, and this time there was no desperation, no anger. It was a slow, deep, emotional consumption. He lifted her from the floor and carried her to the bed, their lips never parting. They made love with an intensity that blurred the physical and the psychic. Her skin blazed under his touch, her light painting their bodies in shifting patterns of violet and blue. He felt her pleasure as if it were his own, a sharp, electric current that bypassed his nerves and went straight to his spine. She felt his control, the iron discipline he held over himself, and she felt him willingly, deliberately, letting it go for her. It was an exploration. He, the scarred veteran, discovered a sensitivity in himself he never knew he possessed. She, the proud princess, discovered a strength in surrender she had never been taught. As the peak washed over them, a wave of shared light and sensation, she arched against him. He felt her mind open to his completely, a final, profound unlocking. She gasped his name, but not with her voice. It was a whisper, clear as a bell, inside his own mind. Logan. They lay in the aftermath, their bodies slick, their limbs entangled. The bond between them was no longer a thread, it was a cable, humming with shared life. A chime sounded, the data. Kalira had set a program to slice the mainframe during the gala. She rose, wrapping a sheet around her, and padded to the terminal. The stolen files materialized, shipping manifests, coded communiques. I have it, she breathed, her eyes scanning the data. It's all here. The trade agreement, the tech transfers signed by Varios and O, by the ancestors. What? The Earth diplomat. He is not just a diplomat. He is a proxy. The entire agreement is countersigned by Earth Off-World High Command. Your old masters. Logan. They are funding Varai in exchange for the relic tech. It's not a trade. It's a military alliance. They're arming him, Logan said, the blood draining from his face. To secure the dynasty and turn the Ravari into an Earth proxy, a puppet state. We have to get this to the High Matriarch, Kalira said, downloading the files onto a data chip. She's not on Trinaxis? No. She is in seclusion on the War Moon, Theron Prime, preparing for the summit. We can get there in 6 hours. They ran. They didn't bother with disguises. They raced through the service corridors, heading for the docking bay where their interceptor waited. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with a small, frail-looking Ravari female in servant's robes. Lyra? Kalira stopped, her voice filled with sudden warmth. Is that you? The female looked up, her eyes wide with fear. My princess. You are alive. Lyra, it is good to see you. You were my mother's aide. You must come with us. You are not safe here. No. My lady, Lyra whispered, wringing her hands. It is you who are not safe. What are you talking about? We are leaving. I told him. Tears streamed down the servant's face. Hey, Prince Varios, he has my family. He said he would kill them if I did not report I saw your ship in the registry. I told him. A cold dread settled over Logan. Kalira, move, now. They burst into the docking bay. The interceptor was there, pristine. The royal guard stood at attention. Get us out of here, Kalira shouted, running for the ramp. They piled in. Logan took the pilot's seat. Kalira the co-pilots. The guards strapped in. Logan fired the engines. The ship whined. A high, sickening sound. Red lights flashed across the console. Engine containment failure, Logan snarled, his hands flying across the controls. It's a critical overload. They sabotaged it, Kalira cried. The ship's reactor was going critical. Logan fought the controls, diverting all power to the hull shields. It's not going to hold, he said, his voice grim. It's going to blow. He looked at the nav chart. Theron Prime, the War Moon. It was their only chance. Override the safety protocols, he commanded. It will tear the ship apart. It's that or we vaporize. He slammed his fist on the console. Do it! Kalira keyed in the command. The ship screamed, a vibration that shook Logan's teeth and shot out of the docking bay, a comet of uncontrolled burning energy aimed at the War Moon. Behind them, the Trinaxis alarms blared, a fleet of Varios' ships already in pursuit. The interceptor was a spear of pure, uncontained fire. It ripped through the black of space, a rogue comet shedding its own hull. Alarms screamed, a single deafening tone of catastrophic failure. Logan fought the controls, but he wasn't flying the ship. He was merely aiming the crash. Shields are at 10%, Kalira shouted over the roar, her hands a blur over the auxiliary console, trying to reroute power that no longer existed. It'll have to be enough, Logan roared back. Theron Prime filled the viewport. It was not a world, it was a scar. A rust-red moon, pockmarked by ancient impacts. Its surface dominated by vast black volcanic plains and the skeletal remains of colossal siege cannons. Weapons from a forgotten war. Where is the matriarch? Logan yelled, wrestling the stick. The northern caldera, the sanctum! Kalira pointed at a vast smoking mountain. We're not going to make it. He saw their trajectory. They were coming in too fast, too hot. Brace! The ship hit the atmosphere, and the remaining hull plates turned cherry red. The vessel was no longer just vibrating, it was tearing itself apart. He saw a flat expanse of black, volcanic glass, a frozen lake of obsidian. It was their only chance. He angled the dying ship, trying to use the last of its momentum to skate rather than impact. The interceptor hit the obsidian plain at over 1,000 kilometers an hour. It was not a landing. It was an impact, a screech of tortured metal, and then a series of violent, bone-jarring skips as the ship shed its wings, its engines, and finally its momentum, gouging a kilometer-long trench in the black glass before finally coming to a rest. Steam and smoke pouring from its broken spine. Silence. Logan tasted blood. He was hanging from the restraint harness, the cockpit around him a twisted ruin. He forced his eyes open. "Kaylira," he choked out. "Here." Her voice was a pained whisper. She was slumped in her co-pilot chair, a gash on her forehead, her bioluminescent skin a dull, sick-looking indigo. "The guards?" A low groan came from the back. One of the royal trackers, the leader, was stirring. The others were still, their black armor streaked with their own dark blue blood. Logan cut himself free, falling to the canted floor. He ripped open the emergency kit, grabbing a sealant. He moved to Kaylira, his own ribs screaming in protest. "I'm fine," she said, pushing his hand away. "See to the guard. He is more useful." Logan ignored her, his touch rough as he smeared the sealant on her wound. "Don't move." Their eyes met, the psychic bond between them. Moments ago a hum of shared adrenaline was now a jagged, open wire. He felt her pain, her fear, and her infuriating, stubborn pride. She felt his cold, focused anger and a deep, aching concern for her that he couldn't hide. She broke the gaze first, looking away. "Thank you." He moved to the guard, who was now sitting up, his helmet cracked. "Report." "We are alive, Lord Consort," the tracker said, his voice rough. "The others are gone. The hull breached in the aft compartment." He looked at his fallen comrades, his face a mask of iron discipline. "A good death, in service to the princess." "We're not dead yet," Logan said, handing him a water pack. "Status on Varaios?" The guard pointed to the cracked viewport. "They are here." In the blood-red sky, 3 sleek black shapes descended, undamaged interceptors. They were Varaios's pursuit. They began a slow, search-pattern circle over the crash site. "We can't stay here," Logan said. He grabbed his pulse rifle, miraculously still racked, and the data chip Kaylira had dropped. "Can we get to the sanctum on foot?" "It is over 40 kilometers," Kaylira said, pulling herself from the chair. "Across the cinder plains, volcanic, unstable, and they will be hunting us from the air." "It's a long walk," Logan agreed. "So let's start." They slipped from the wreckage, a trio of ghosts moving against the black glass. The air on Theron Prime was thin, tasting of ash and sulfur. They kept to the shadows of the ancient skeletal siege weapons. Colossal cannons aimed at a sky they had not fired at in a millennium. The ships overhead were methodical, sweeping the plains with searchlights. "They cannot see us," the guard, whose name Logan learned was Kalen, said. "This is a war moon. The ground is rich in heavy disruptive metals. Scanners are useless. They must hunt us by eye." "That gives us an edge," Logan said. They walked for hours. The black glass gave way to jagged volcanic rock and rivers of slow-moving, cooling magma. The heat was oppressive, shimmering in the air. Kaylira was limping, the crash having aggravated her old wound. "We stop," Logan commanded, pulling her into the shadow of a basalt spire. "We do not stop," she countered, her voice tight with pain. "They are hunting. You're injured. You need 2 minutes. He tore a strip of fabric from his uniform and knelt, expertly wrapping her ankle. His touch was firm, impersonal, yet the bond flared. She hissed, pulling away, but not because of the pain. Do not what? Keep you from collapsing? Do not feel like that, she whispered, her eyes averted. It is confusing. What am I feeling, Kaylira? He asked, his voice low, his hands still on her ankle. She looked at him, her violet eyes stark in the red gloom. You feel protective. You feel warm. It is not what a consort should feel. It is not of the right. This cannot be love. Logan. Why not? He asked, tying off the bandage. He looked up at her, his scarred face hard. Because I'm a human ape. Because I'm not a purple-blooded prince. Because love is a weakness, she shot back. It is an indulgence. My people are being sold. My dynasty is collapsing. I am on a desperate mission to save my entire culture. I do not have the luxury of love. You think love is a luxury? He stood, his height forcing her to look up at him. Love is a reason. Kaylira, it's the only reason. I've seen men die for flags, for credits, for orders. It's all dust. But I've seen them die for love, of a person, of a home. That's the only thing that's real. That is a human sentiment, she said, turning away, her voice dismissive. But through the bond, he felt the lie. He felt the spike of desperate, aching longing. She wasn't dismissing the idea, she was terrified of it. It's just a sentiment, he said, his voice softer. And I'm just a man. Let's move. Kaylin, who had stood guard with perfect stoic silence, simply nodded and took the lead. As they walked, the stress and the familiar terrain, a war-torn, hostile landscape, triggered something in Logan. The world around him faded, the red sky of Theron Prime replaced by the sickly green-brown sky of Krelix 7. He was a captain then, young, decorated. He and his men were pushing through a civilian sector, orders from high command clear. Pacify the resistance, total pacification. They'd found the resistance, a school, repurposed as a bunker. But it was still full of children, 200, maybe 300 of them, huddled in the lower levels, protected by a handful of lightly armed militia. His superior's voice crackled over the comms. The facility is compromised. Captain Rourke, sanctioning tactical cleansing. Use the incendiaries. Logan had looked at his men. He'd looked at the school. Negative. Command. We have civilian non-combatants. I'm securing the children and taking the militia as prisoners. That is a direct violation of Standing Order 92. Captain, cleanse the facility, or you will be relieved. Logan had looked at the terrified face of a small alien child clutching a doll. He made his choice. This is Captain Rourke. My comms are faulty. I'm proceeding with prisoner extraction. He'd cut the channel. He'd saved the children, every single one. But he'd lost everything else. When he returned to base, he was arrested, stripped of his rank, and court-martialed for disobeying a direct order in a combat zone. He was a traitor, an immoral soldier, they'd called him, for choosing morality over the mission. He was given a choice, execution for treason or permanent dishonorable exile. He chose exile. He never regretted the choice. But the ghost of the man he was, the commander who believed in the system, had died on Krelix 7. He blinked. The green sky was gone. It was red again. Kaylira was looking at him, her expression one of profound confusion. What was that? She whispered. He hadn't realized. The bond was so strong, his memory so vivid, that he had broadcast it. She had seen it. She had felt it. That was Krelix 7, he said, his voice hollow. That was the day I lost my command. She stared at him, her violet eyes wide. You saved them, the children, against orders, and was branded a traitor for it. That's the Earth off-world military you're so eager to trust. She didn't speak. She just watched him. This man she thought was a simple brute, this unmarked warrior. She had seen his past, and she had seen his soul. Lord Consort, Kalen interrupted, his voice a low hiss. He pointed. Ahead of them, nestled in a deep volcanic fissure, was a small ancient structure, a dome of black fused rock. The old archive, Kalira breathed, her focus snapping back. A relay station from the Great Silence. I did not think it was still standing. It's a shelter, Logan said, and it might have a transmitter. The archive was coated in a thick layer of red ash. The door was sealed, but Kalen used the last of his pike's charge to burn the lock open. Inside, it was cold, dark, and still. The air was breathable, ancient filters still barely functioning. A single crystalline console stood in the center. Kalira ran to it. Her fingers flew across the alien runes. It has power, reserve power, from the geothermal vents. It's been recorded. Recording what? Everything. Her eyes widened. The old War Moon protocols. It's a black box, a repository, and it records all high-frequency transmissions in this sector, as a fail-safe for the dynasty. Varios's comms? Logan asked, his pulse quickening. If he used the royal frequencies, yes. She worked, her light pulsing in the dark. The console hummed. A holographic image flickered to life above it. It was Varios. He was standing in his basalt tower on Ravari Prime. The human diplomats were there. The entire scene from Trinaxis played out. But this was the raw, unencrypted transmission. Sell our sacred ancestral tech, our relics, our very soul. Varios's voice echoed in the small dome. This is it, Kalira breathed. This is the proof, his own words. But the recording didn't stop. It continued. The Earth's corporatocracy is weak, Varios was saying. They believe I am their puppet, but the relic tech I have given them is a fraction of what we possess, and the fuel they give me will power not our grid, but the old fleet, the true fleet. He's playing them, Logan said. Worse, Kalira whispered, horrified. He's using them. He plans to take their fuel, reactivate the siege weapons on this very moon, and by the ancestors he plans to attack the Earth territories. He's starting a new war, one he thinks he can win, using Earth's own resources against them. He's a madman, Logan said. He is a true traitor, Kalira corrected, her voice cold with rage. She slammed her hand onto the console, downloading the file. The summit is a lie. He's gathering the entire human diplomatic fleet in one place, Trinaxis, to annihilate them in a single stroke. And he'll blame it on me. The console beeped. Download complete. She held the data chip in her hand. The High Matriarch must see this. The Sanctum, Logan said. We have to get there. As if on cue, the archive systems, strained by the sudden use, sparked. The lights flickered. A new sound, a low, pulsing beep. What is that? The transmitter, Kalira said, her face pale. It's reactivating. The system rebooted the communications array. Our ship, Logan realized. The crash. It must have sent a final corrupted data packet. This archive picked it up, and it's trying to send a signal, she finished. A distress call. Varios's ships will trace it. They already have, Kalen said, his hand on his pike hilt. He was looking at the sealed door. Through the thick, ancient rock, they heard it, the distant sound of engines, hovering, and then the thud of armored boots on the ash outside. They were surrounded. They were trapped. Kailira looked at the data chip in her hand. She looked at Logan. Her face, which had been a mask of royal fury, suddenly crumpled. She was back to being the terrified woman on the bridge. "It's over," she whispered. "We failed. All this for nothing." Logan gripped his rifle. One guard, a princess with a data chip, and a broken veteran with 3 rounds left in his clip. Outside, a full platoon of elite soldiers. The odds were impossible. He thought of Krellick 7, a different hopeless fight. "It's not over until we're dust, princess," he said, his voice a low growl. "But we will be dust," she said, tears welling in her violet eyes. "They will take this. They will kill us. And all of it, the bond you have, will have been for nothing. I don't want to die like this, in the cold, with this fear." She stepped toward him, her entire body shaking. "He will take me. He will cleanse me. He will put a chip in my head and make me his pet." She grabbed the front of his uniform, her knuckles white. "I am a princess of the Ravari. I am not a thing." Her eyes were wild. "Before they come, before they take me, I want to feel something true." Logan stared at her, his heart hammering against his ribs. He understood. It wasn't about sex. It was about defiance. It was about choosing her end. "You said the ancient rites," she whispered, her voice desperate. "On Trinaxis, it was a game. This is survival. This is the final rite. The joining of 2 warriors before the last battle, to face the void as one. Please, Logan, do not let me die like him. Let me be yours." He was hesitant. This was not him. This was not a choice he would ever make. But he looked in her eyes, and he saw the terror, and he felt it echoing in his own mind through the bond. She was begging. For her sanity. For her soul. "Please," she wept. "I am so afraid." He made his choice. He wasn't her captain. He wasn't her savior. He was just her man. He lifted his hand and touched her face. "You will not die afraid," he whispered. "You will die a queen." Kalen, the lone guard, saw the look on his lord consort's face. He saw his princess. He understood, without a word. He turned, walked to the sealed door, and stood before it, his back to them, his pike energized, a silent, loyal guardian. Logan pulled Kailira into the darkest shadow of the archive, behind the humming console. He kissed her, and it was not a kiss of love or tenderness. It was a kiss of fury, of survival, of 2 souls raging against the dying of the light. It was wild, urgent, a desperate, emotional claim. He tore at her armor, and she at his uniform. Their second union was a clash of worlds. Her skin, blazing with a frantic, pulsing light, felt like fire against his body, scarred and hard, was an anchor in the storm that was her fear. It was a complete surrender. She gave him everything, her fear, her rage, her hope, her pain. She poured it all into him through the bond. He took it. He took all of it, absorbing her terror. In its place, he gave her his own unbending, unbreakable core. He gave her his strength, his history, his refusal to die on his knees. Her body pulsed with a wild rhythm, her light no longer just on her skin but around them, in the air, merging with his mind, his very essence. He was Ravari. She was human. They were one, a single defiant being in the dark. The universe fell away, until there was only the pulse. High. Hers. Theirs. The boom of the archive door exploding snapped them back. The room flooded with light, smoke, the silhouettes of soldiers in black armor. "There!" a voice shouted. Logan shoved Kailira behind him, grabbing his rifle. Kalen, the loyal guard, was already dead, his body slumped by the door, riddled with plasma fire, Logan fired his first shot. A soldier fell. He fired his second. Another staggered. He sighted the third. Click. Empty. He threw the rifle. Useless. As a plasma bolt struck his shoulder, spinning him around, he hit the floor, his arm a numb, burning agony. "Logan!" Kaylira screamed. Soldiers swarmed him. He felt the impact of a rifle butt to his temple. Once. Twice. The world tilted, the red light of the archive turning dark. He saw Kaylira fighting, her face a mask of primal fury. But there were too many. A soldier jammed a hypospray against her neck. Her body went limp, her light extinguishing like a snuffed candle. They dragged Logan to his feet, his arms pinned and he was beaten, his ribs cracking, his face a mask of blood. Through the fog of pain, he saw a new figure enter the archive. Prince Varaios. He was tall, his armor a polished, flawless black. He walked past Logan as if he were furniture. He looked down at Kaylira's unconscious form. "My foolish cousin," he said, his voice a disappointed purr. He knelt and picked up the data chip she had dropped. "Always leading with your heart." He tossed the chip to an aide. "Wipe the archive, all of it." He then looked at Logan, his eyes cold and analytical. "The ape, the stranger of flame. How disappointing. You are just a man covered in blood, and you have defiled a princess of the dynasty. She's more of a ruler than you'll ever be." Logan spat, his words thick with blood. Varaios actually smiled. "She was..." He nodded to the guards holding her. "Take her to the Inquisitor. Begin the cleansing. I want her mind scrubbed, her status stripped, and the behavioral chip implanted before the summit vote. She will attend, and she will endorse my ascension." He turned back to Logan. "As for you, you do not get to die. Not yet. You will be kept as a gift, a reminder to the High Matriarch of what happens when sentiment interferes with progress." "Kill me," Logan growled. "No," Varaios said. "I want you to watch." He motioned to his men. "Take him." Logan fought a last desperate surge of adrenaline, but it was useless. He was beaten into submission, his consciousness fading. The last thing he saw before the blackness took him was Kaylira's limp body being carried out of the archive. She was drugged, she was captured, and he was broken. Logan awoke to the smell of antiseptic and recycled oxygen. His head throbbed, a brutal drumbeat behind his eyes. He was strapped to a cold metal table. A medical autodoc was humming over him, its articulated arm stitching the gash on his temple. He was in a cell, but it was clean, bright, a high-security medical bay. His wounds were being treated. He flexed his hands. His ribs were bound. The plasma burn on his shoulder was bandaged. Varaios hadn't just captured him. He was keeping his gift in good condition. The psychic bond with Kaylira was a dull, agonizing ache. He couldn't feel her anymore. There was just a cold, static-filled void where her blazing consciousness had been. The drugging, the separation, had muted the connection, but not broken it. He could feel the absence of her, and it was a form of torture. He lay still, feigning unconsciousness, and listened. Guards, 2 of them, outside the transparent aluminum door. Their armor hummed. The autodoc finished its work and retracted into the wall. A moment later, the door hissed open. A guard entered, holding a protein tray. He was a large Ravari, his face impassive. He unstrapped Logan's legs, then his right arm. He was careless. He saw a beaten, half-conscious human. He didn't see the veteran of Krelix 7. The moment the guard reached to unstrap his left arm, Logan moved. He drove his bound left fist into the guard's throat, a brutal, precise strike. The guard gagged, his eyes wide with shock. Logan brought his legs up, kicking the tray into the guard's chest, and rolled off the table, his right arm now free. The guard raised his plasma pike. Logan was inside its range, smashing his forehead into Ravari's face. The guard stumbled back. The second guard, in the hallway, saw the commotion and raised his rifle. Logan grabbed the first guard, pulling his body around as a shield. The plasma bolt slammed into the guard's back. Logan used the dying soldier's own hand to unclip the magnetic grenade from his belt. He thumbed the detonator to a 1-second fuse, shoved it onto the door control panel, and kicked the guard's body toward the hall, diving back behind the table. The explosion was contained, but deafening. It blew the door off its track and filled the hall with smoke. Logan didn't wait. He grabbed the dead guard's sidearm, a heavy plasma pistol, and ran. He was on a Ravari warship, the Inquisitor. The architecture was all sharp angles and dark, polished metal. Alarms were blaring. He had no plan, only a single driving purpose. Find her. He rounded a corner and ran straight into a cargo bay. It was massive, and in the center, parked in a charging alcove, was his chance. It wasn't a war machine. It was a cargo loader, a utility mech, 10 feet tall, all hydraulic limbs and pincer claws, a prison-born mech suit. 2 engineers were working on it. They looked up, shouting. Logan didn't hesitate. He shot them, not to kill but to wound. 1 in the leg, 1 in the shoulder. He wasn't a murderer, not anymore. He vaulted into the open cockpit, slamming his fist onto the activation panel. The mech whined to life. A Ravari command prompt flashed on the screen, demanding passwords, authorizations, genetic seals. Logan snarled. He ripped a service panel from the console, exposing the raw circuitry. He found the main data bus. This was an old Earth off-world trick, War Protocol Alpha 9, the brute force override. He jammed the pistol's power cell against the data port, shorting the system. The mech seized, alarms blaring. The Ravari OS vanished, replaced by a simple text-only boot screen. System override. Enter command protocol. Logan's fingers flew, typing in the ancient forbidden command codes from his old military days. He wasn't just booting the mech. He was reprogramming its core logic, turning a forklift into a weapon. He bypassed the safety limiters on the hydraulic joints, overclocked the fusion core, and remapped the pincer claws to the trigger. The mech's engine roared, its whine changing from a hum to a predatory growl. "Where is the cleansing?" he shouted at the wounded engineers. One of them, clutching his leg, pointed a shaking finger. "The war court, mid-deck, by the Ancestors' Hall. You are a dead man." "We're all dead men," Logan said, sealing the cockpit. "I'm just first." He smashed the mech through the cargo bay doors, a 10-foot-tall, 2-ton monster of pure, reprogrammed fury. The Ravari War Court was a vast circular chamber, open to the stars, shielded by a shimmering energy field. In the center, on a raised obsidian dais, the ceremony was underway. Kailira was there. She was stripped of her armor, dressed in a simple white silk robe. Her white hair was unbound, flowing around her. She was surrounded by 3 high priests in black, ceremonial masks. She was conscious, but her movements were sluggish, her eyes unfocused. The drugs. Varayo stood on a balcony overlooking the dais, watching. Beside him stood a robed figure holding a tray. On it, a hypo spray and a small silver chip, the behavioral implant. "By the blood of the first dynasty," the lead priest intoned, his voice amplified. "We cast out the taint. We cleanse the vessel. We sever the false bond." He raised a ceremonial blade over Kailira's head. He was not going to kill her. He was going to cut her hair, the first act of stripping her royal status. "No," Kailira whispered, a faint, slurred protest. Through the void, Logan felt a pinprick of her terror, a tiny spark. "I'm here," he thought, projecting it with all his will. "Hold on," The spark flared. Kalira's head snapped up. Logan! Then the wall exploded. Logan burst into the war court in the cargo loader, smashing through a 6-foot-thick basalt wall as if it were paper. The mech, running on overclocked war protocols, moved with a speed it was never designed for. For the princess! Logan's voice boomed over the mech's external speakers, a distorted metallic roar. The guards opened fire, plasma fire stitched across the mech's unarmored chassis. It was dying, but it was functional. He swept one massive hydraulic arm, sending a dozen guards flying like dolls. He used the pincer claw, crushing plasma rifles, tearing down banners. "Varaios," he roared. "You wanted a gift? Come and get it." Varaios' face was a mask of pure, cold fury. "Kill him! Kill the ape!" On the dais, Kalira moved. The shock, the adrenaline, her connection to Logan, it burned through the drugs. As the priests turned, distracted by the chaos, she lunged, not for a weapon, for the artifact. On a pedestal behind the dais sat a long silver staff, pulsating with a faint internal light. The ceremonial staff of the ancestors. It was said to be a key, a conduit. She grabbed it. The moment her hand touched the metal, the staff flared with a blinding white light. A sound, like a chorus of 1,000 voices, echoed through the war court. The priests recoiled, their hands to their ears. Kalira's eyes snapped open, no longer drugged, but blazing with a pure violet fire. The mech was failing. Logan's console was a sea of red alerts. He was taking too much fire. He stomped the mech forward, its metal foot crushing the cleansing dais, and reached down with the pincer claw. "Get in!" he yelled. Kalira, staff in hand, didn't hesitate. She grabbed the pincer claw as Logan lifted her, shielding her with the mech's own body. He deposited her in the open, smoking chassis beside his cockpit. "Hold on." He turned the dying mech and ran, smashing back out the hole he'd made. "All ships!" Varaios screamed from the balcony. "Lock onto that mech, destroy it, destroy them both!" Logan ran through the corridors, the mech's systems failing one by one. "They're going to fire on us, inside the ship." "He doesn't care," Kalira said, her voice clear and strong, the staff held tight. "He will sacrifice his own ship to kill us. Where is the nearest hangar?" "This way." They burst into a smaller hangar. A single, sleek, black ship sat there. A diplomatic shuttle. "That'll do." Logan's mech was limping, one leg almost severed. He reached the shuttle, using the pincer to rip the locked boarding ramp open. "Go, get in, start the engines." Kalira jumped into the shuttle. Logan turned the mech to face the door, a final, defiant stand. He could hear the heavy, armored footsteps of a platoon of guards. He waited until the shuttle's engines whined. "Logan!" she screamed from the cockpit. "Come on!" "Get out of here, Kalira!" he yelled, his heart breaking. "I'll buy you time. I am not leaving you, the bond I will not have." The guards appeared. They opened fire. Logan's mech absorbed the blasts, its metal skin melting. He saw Kalira run from the cockpit, the ancestral staff in her hand. She ran to the rear of the shuttle, to the engine manifold. "What are you doing?" "What you did!" she yelled. She jammed the glowing end of the staff into the shuttle's power conduit, just as he had done with the pistol's power cell. "Alpha 9! The shuttle's engines didn't just start. They exploded, a wave of pure, uncontained energy, amplified by the staff, blasted from the engines, washing over the hangar. The guards were incinerated. Logan's mech was thrown backward, landing in a heap. The hangar doors buckled. The Inquisitor's main reactor, hit by the feedback loop, began to fail. "It worked!" Kalira ran to him, her face alight. Logan kicked open the cockpit, his body aching. "You're insane! You could have blown us all up." "I am Ravari," she said, pulling him from the wreck. "We do not die in chains. Now come." My mother is waiting. She dragged him into the shuttle, which was now humming, stabilized. They sealed the door, and Kaelira pulled them out of the exploding hangar, punching a hole through the Inquisitor's failing shields and jumping to light speed, leaving Varios and his crippled flagship behind. Their destination, Ravari Prime. The ancestral Sky Temple was not a building. It was a mountain, its peak carved into a series of graceful open-air spires that seemed to touch the twin moons. The shuttle landed on a wide, wind-swept platform. Kaelira stepped out, staff in hand. Logan followed, his plasma pistol still in his grip. A line of female Ravari warriors, armored in silver and white, met them. They did not aim weapons. They simply watched. "I am here to see the High Matriarch," Kaelira announced, her voice echoing in the thin mountain air. "She awaits, Princess," the lead guard said. She looked at Logan, her eyes lingering, filled with disapproval. "She awaits both of you." They were led into a vast circular chamber, open to the night sky. In the center, on a simple stone throne, sat a single woman. She was old, but her age was a thing of power, not frailty. Her white hair was braided with silver. Her violet eyes were darker, deeper than Kaelira's, and they held an ocean of sorrow and iron. This was High Matriarch Tayla, Kaelira's mother. "Mother," Kaelira said, kneeling. "You bring a war to my doorstep." "Daughter," Tayla said, her voice quiet, yet it carried across the stone. "You reek of it, and you bring him." Her gaze fell on Logan. It was not a look. It was a physical weight. "The ape, the unmarked, the ghost who haunts my daughter's mind." Logan did not flinch. "Ma'am, you have broken every law," Tayla said, rising. "You have touched a royal. You have forged a bond. You have brought the shame of an outsider into the sacred bloodline. And for this, my daughter believes you are a savior." "He is," Kaelira said, rising. "Mother, Varios is a traitor. He is—" "I know what Varios is," Tayla cut her off. "I am not blind, but his treason does not sanctify your own." She looked at Logan. "You have my daughter's mind. She cannot be trusted. Yours contaminates her emotions. I must know the truth about you." "How?" Logan asked. "The Veil Shara, the Dream Share." Tayla extended a hand. "You will join me. You will let me into your mind, your past, your soul. And I will see the man who has claimed my child. If you are false, if you are weak, I will sever your bond, and you will not wake up." "Mother, no!" Kaelira cried. "It will kill him. No outsider has ever survived the share." "I will," Logan said. He looked at Kaelira, his gaze steady. "I have to." He stepped forward, holstering his pistol. "I'm not afraid of what she'll find." "We shall see," the matriarch said. She took his hand. Her grip was like cold steel. The world vanished. Logan was not in a temple. He was on Krelix 7. The sky was green-brown. The school was burning. "Cleanse the facility, Captain." He heard the order. He saw the children. He felt the agony of the choice. But he was not alone. Tayla was beside him, a silent, spectral observer. She watched him, this young, idealistic captain, defy his orders. She saw him carry the small alien child from the flames. She felt the moment his career died and his honor was born. The scene shifted. He was on the Vagabond, in the cold, empty cockpit, 10 years of exile. The loneliness, the silence, the ghost of a man. Tayla felt the weight of his isolation. The scene shifted again. The crystal cavern on Virelia 9. Kaelira, unconscious. The sand beast. The bridge. "I've got you." He patted her head. Tayla saw it all, not as an observer, but through his eyes. feeling the raw, protective instinct that had driven him. Finally, the archive, the desperation, the wild, urgent joining. You will die a queen. Taylor saw his trauma, his rage, his deep, buried code of honor. She saw the man who had lost everything, but who had never ever broken his own word. She had entered his mind to find a brute, a defiler. She found a soldier. She found a man of honor, more Ravari in his soul than many of her own. The world returned. Logan gasped, falling to one knee, sweat pouring down his face. The share was agony. Taylor, too, was shaking, her hand still holding his, her eyes wide. He did not break, she whispered, stunned. He did not even bend. She looked at Logan, her gaze no longer cold, but filled with a new, grudging, and profound respect. You have suffered. You have chosen. You are worthy of the name warrior. She released his hand. You have passed the trial. Your bond is true. You may stay. Logan Rourke. Logan got to his feet, his body aching. He looked at Kalira. Her face was streaked with tears. Later, they stood on a high balcony, overlooking the sacred valley of Ravari Prime. The twin moons, one silver, one blue, bathed the world in a celestial light. The air was cool and clean. The bond between them was no longer a thread. It was a river. It was permanent, a part of their biology, their very souls. He felt the constant low hum of her emotions, her relief, her fear for the future, her deep, bone-deep connection to him. She felt his exhaustion, his steadiness, his unbending will. It's never going to fade, is it? She whispered, not looking at him. No, he said, it's too much. I feel you all the time. Your quiet, your pain. I don't know where I end and you begin. She wrapped her arms around herself. It's terrifying. Logan turned, facing her. He gently took her arms. Kalira, I'm a ghost. I'm not a prince. I'm not a consort. I'm just a broken soldier. He gestured to the temple, the planet. This is your world, your fight. If you want me to go, I'll go. I'll find a ship. I'll cut myself out of your life. If the bond can be severed, I'll do it. Just ask me. She looked up at him, her violet eyes swimming in the moonlight. Would you do that, after all this? I'm not Varios, he said, his voice rough. I'm not here to rule you. I'm here so I don't know what I'm here for. But I won't be your cage. She stared at him, and he felt the shift in the bond, from fear to a sudden, overwhelming wave of emotion. She began to cry, not loud sobs but silent, heavy tears that rolled down her cheeks. I have fought so hard, she whispered. For my honor, for my people, for my freedom, all my life, I have been a princess, a symbol, a target. I have been alone. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his chest. He felt her tears soak through his ragged uniform. I would rather die, she choked out, than live without my freedom. And by the ancestors, I would rather die than live without you. Logan's arms, the scarred, calloused arms of a killer, came up and wrapped around her. He held her gently, as if she were made of glass. He rested his cheek on the top of her white hair. Then we live, he promised, his voice a raw vow in the moonlight. And we stay free. He held her for a long time. Finally, her breathing evened. She looked up, her eyes clear, her resolve hardened. Mother has the proof, the recordings. She can stop Varios at the summit. She can expose him to the high circle. Your mother is smart, Logan said. But Varios is smarter. He's not just a traitor. He's a zealot. He won't let a data chip stop him. He's planning to start a war. The summit. Kalira realized, her blood running cold. He'll be there. The High Circle will be there. The human fleet will be there. He's not planning to win a vote, Logan said, his face grim, the old tactical mind clicking into place. He's planning an assassination. He's going to wipe out the entire High Circle, blame it on the humans, and use your mother's proof of his trade as a rallying cry for his new war. Kalira looked at him, her face a mask of horrified understanding. He will seize control in the chaos. He will become a martyr and a new emperor. And we're the only ones who know. Logan checked his plasma pistol. It had a full charge. We have to go back, not to the Trinaxis, to the summit. The final clan assembly, Kalira said, her hand gripping the ancestral staff. It's on Ravari Prime, in the Great Hall, tomorrow. Then we have one night, Logan said. He looked at her, his gaze unwavering. One night to prepare. He's bringing a war. We'll have to bring a bigger one. The Great Hall of the Ravari ancestors was a cavern of impossible scale, carved into the heart of the mountain. Its walls were raw, unpolished basalt, its ceiling a vast open dome that showed the black star-dusted sky and the twin moons. Silver and blue. Thousands of Ravari, from every caste and clan, filled the tiered stone benches. They were silent, a sea of dark armor, silver-white hair, and cold, violet eyes. At one end, on a throne of black obsidian, sat High Matriarch Taylor, her face a mask of regal indifference. Below her, the High Circle, the oldest nobles of the dynasty, sat in judgment. At the other end, a small, shielded platform held the human delegation from the Trinaxis, pale, nervous, and utterly out of their element. Varayo stood in the center, bathed in the blue light of the moons. He was magnificent, his black armor polished to a mirror shine, his voice resonating with charismatic power. "The evidence is clear," he boomed, his arms outstretched. "The Inquisitor, a flagship of our dynasty, was sabotaged and destroyed. The human lover, my cousin Kalira, was seen fleeing the wreck with her ape consort. They have brought this human filth plague to our sacred home. They are traitors, not me." He had used the archive data, but he had twisted it. He claimed Kalira's recordings were fakes, and that his own alliance with Earth Off-World was a fabrication she created to justify her treason. "I call for a vote of the High Circle," Varayos declared. "To strip Kalira of her blood name, to declare war on the human fleet that now poisons our sky, and to consolidate the clans under a single unified command. Mine." A murmur of assent went through the crowd. He was winning. "You lie." The voice, clear and cold, cut through the hall. The massive stone doors at the back of the hall opened. Kalira entered. She was not dressed as a princess. She wore a simple white ceremonial robe, her hair unbound. In her hand, she held the long silver staff of the ancestors. Beside her, his face grim, his scarred body clad in the same ragged fatigues, was Logan. He carried his plasma pistol, and he looked entirely unimpressed by the thousands of warriors watching him. The hall erupted in gasps and shouts. Varayos's face, for a split second, showed pure, undiluted rage. "You dare show your face here, traitor?" Varayos snarled. "You defile this hall with your pet." "I am no traitor, cousin," Kalira said, her voice amplified by the staff, a faint chorus of other voices echoing her own. She stopped in the center of the hall, Logan at her side. "And this is no pet. He is my choice." She raised the staff, and it flared with white light. "You claim my proof is false? Then look upon the vile Shara." She had not brought the data chip. She was the data chip. The dream share with her mother had left its mark. She projected the memory, her own and Logan's, into the staff, Above them, in the open air, a new constellation formed. Holographic images, raw and unfiltered, blazed. They saw Varios in his tower. They heard his deal with the human diplomats. They heard him plotting to steal Earth's fuel. And most damning of all, they heard him give the order. I want her mind scrubbed and the behavioral chip implanted. The assembly was silent. This was not a recording. This was a memory. The air crackled with the staff's power. Varios saw his support collapsing. The high circle stared at him, their faces masks of cold fury. "Lies!" he roared, desperate. "Psychic fabrication. Humans have tainted her. She is unclean. I will not be judged by a harlot and her ape." "Then you will be judged by the old way," Kalira said, her voice dropping, all warmth gone, leaving only the ice of a queen. "I invoke the rail core, the right of dual combat, my blood against yours, for the right to rule." A shocked silence fell. The rail core had not been invoked in 500 years. Varios laughed, a sound of pure relief. "You challenge me? You who have hidden behind a man your entire life?" "I am a princess of the first dynasty," Kalira said, "but I am also his. I will not fight you. My chosen blade will fight in my name." She turned, her white robe sweeping the stone, and pointed the glowing ancestral staff directly at Logan. The collective gasp of the entire assembly sucked the air from the hall. A human, an unaugmented, scarred, off-world ape, named as a sacred champion. It was the deepest insult imaginable, or it was the ultimate truth of the prophecy. "So be it," Varios bellowed, a triumphant, cruel smile spreading across his face. "The ape fights for the ape lover, a fitting end to a broken bloodline. I, too, name a champion." He gestured to the shadows. A figure stepped forward and the crowd murmured in fear. He was Ravari, but he was a monster, over 7 feet tall. His body was a grotesque fusion of black armor and whining silver chrome hydraulics. His eyes were glowing red optic implants, and plasma emitters were built into his gauntlets. This was Malachor, Varios's personal executioner, a warrior who had traded his soul for augmentation. "My champion, Malachor," Varios purred, "against your animal." High Matriarch Taylor rose. Her voice was cold. "The right is invoked. The Veil Korath will be opened. Let the ancestors judge this day." The center of the hall floor groaned, and a massive circular section of stone retracted, revealing a deep, glass-walled, cylindrical arena beneath. The Void Chamber. Logan handed his pistol to Kalira. He began to unclip his battered tack vest. "Logan," she whispered, her hand on his arm. The bond was a torrent of her fear, a cold, sickening dread. "You do not have to do this. This is not your fight." I patted your head. "Princess," he said, his voice a low growl. He pulled off his shirt, revealing the landscape of scars that covered his chest and back. The crowd murmured. He was pure, raw flesh. "I'm pretty sure this has been my fight from that moment on." He took a simple, serrated shock blade from a guard, a primitive thing compared to his opponent. "He is augmented," Kalira said, her voice tight. "His reaction time will be 10 times yours. He sees in 4 spectrums, and you are just a man." Logan turned. He looked at her, his gray eyes clear. "That's why I'm going to win." He stepped onto the platform, across from him. Malachor entered, the stone vibrating under his augmented weight. The glass wall is sealed. "The air," Logan said, his voice patched through the speakers, "is being vented, correct?" "Combat in the Void Chamber is 0 gravity," Taylor's voice echoed. Logan's grim expression flickered. "Good." He cracked his neck. "I've been in a few bar fights in 0G. The air hissed out. The platforms they stood on were lowered into the chamber, and then the artificial gravity cut out. They were floating. Malachor, with his implants and his arrogance, moved first. He was a spider. Small thrusters in his armor fired, propelling him across the chamber, plasma emitters blazing. He expected Logan to be a clumsy, tumbling fool. He was wrong. Logan was a veteran of the off-world wars. He had spent years in ship-to-ship boarding actions, fighting in the microgravity of breached hulls. This was his home. He didn't fight the zero-G. He used it. He kicked off the wall, a perfect controlled vector dodging the plasma bolts. He moved like a ghost, all angles and instinct. Malachor's targeting computer whined, unable to lock. His augmentations were predicting where a Ravari warrior would be. Logan wasn't there. While the animals played, Varios decided to end the game. He drew his own blade, a shimmering black energy katana. "My cousin," he said, stalking toward her. "The laws of the right are clear. While the champions fight, so do the masters." He lunged. Kaelira didn't flinch. She raised the staff of the ancestors. Varios's blade hit the silver staff with a deafening clang. A shockwave of white light erupted from the point of impact. Varios was thrown back, his arm numb. "You dare not strike me," Kaelira said, her voice now a chorus of 1,000 ancestral warriors. "You are an echo, a shadow, a thief." She advanced. She did not fight like a warrior. She fought like a queen. She didn't swing the staff. She presented it. Every time Varios lunged, she blocked. With every block, a new flash of light, a new whispered accusation, filled the hall. "Deceiver!" The staff flared. Varios attacked again, furious. "Kinslayer!" The staff blazed, and Varios cried out, as if the light itself were a physical blow. He was not fighting her. He was fighting the combined psychic weight of his entire bloodline. Inside the chamber, Logan was bleeding. He was fast, but Malachor was relentless. A plasma bolt had grazed his ribs. He was breathing hard, his lungs aching. Malachor, his red eyes glowing, saw the weakness. He abandoned the plasma emitters and activated the thrusters in his boots, launching himself across the chamber for a killing blow. His hydraulic fist raised. He was all power, no finesse. His augmentations told him it was a 100% kill probability. Logan didn't dodge. He moved toward it. At the last second, he grabbed Malachor's charging arm, using the cyborg's own momentum to spin them both. Malachor's brain was fast, but his augmented body, weighing half a ton, couldn't correct in time. Logan slammed his simple shock blade, not into the armor, but into the one place a pure flesh warrior would know to guard, the unshielded hydraulic cabling in Malachor's armpit. Malachor roared, his arm seized, smoking, the hydraulics blown. He was enraged. He swung his other functional arm, a backhand blow that sent Logan spinning, crashing into the glass wall. The entire hall watched, breathless. The human ape was holding his own. Varios saw it too. He was losing. His champion was failing, and Kaelira was driving him back, the light of the ancestors exposing his soul. "No more!" Varios screamed. He feinted at Kaelira, then spun, pulling a concealed plasma pistol from his boot. He didn't aim at Kaelira. He aimed at the void chamber. He aimed at Logan. "Varios, no!" Taylor screamed, rising from her throne. It was a violation of all honor. "To the void with honor!" Varios fired. "Logan!" Kaelira shrieked, her voice her own again, raw with terror. Logan was floating, disoriented, his vision blurred. He saw the flash. He couldn't move. But Malachor, his arm still seized, was directly between Logan and the blast. The plasma bolt hit the cyborg square in the back. His armor, designed to deflect energy, instead absorbed it. His power core, already overclocked, went critical. But the energy was too much. It punched through the cyborg's body. A secondary, weaker, but still lethal blast of superheated plasma erupted from Malicor's chest and hit Logan. Logan cried out, a raw, human sound. The blast caught him full in the side, burning through flesh and muscle. His body went limp, a cloud of crimson vaporized blood expanding around him in the 0G. The artificial gravity slammed back on. The void chamber's shield dropped. Malicor's body, a smoking ruin, crashed to the stone floor. And Logan fell, a 10-foot drop, landing in a broken, bleeding heap. No. Kaelira's voice was a dead whisper. The staff, the symbol of her power, her dynasty, her right to rule it clattered from her hand, its light extinguishing. She ran. She didn't care about the summit. She didn't care about the crown. She didn't care about the thousands watching. She fell to her knees in the blood, gathering Logan's limp body into her arms. Logan, Logan, stay with me. She wept, her tears a stark, clear contrast to the blood smearing her white robe. No, please, not you, do not leave me. A collective, horrified gasp filled the hall. She had done the unforgivable. She had shown weakness. She had dropped the sacred staff. She had chosen the life of an alien, a non-believer, an ape, over her sacred duty, over the right of combat. Varaios, his face pale with shock, saw his victory. She is weak, he screamed, his voice triumphant. She is defiled, a false princess. The law is broken, the ancestors reject her. He raised his energy katana. Seize her! Seize the defiler! The silver and white royal guards, sworn to protect the matriarch and the sacred law, hesitated. They looked at each other. Their faces were torn. She had failed. She had broken the right. Their honor demanded they act. Slowly, as one, they raised their plasma pikes, not at Varaios, at her. Kaelira didn't even notice. She was clutching Logan's body, her eyes blind with tears. I am here, she whispered to him. I am here. Through the agony, through the gray, fading light, Logan felt her, her terror, her grief. The bond was a screaming, open wound. He heard the sound of armored boots moving. He smelled the ozone of charging plasma pikes. He gripped her arm. His hand, covered in his own blood, was a tight, agonizing vice. Kaelira, he choked out. I'm here. Logan, I'm here. She sobbed. Look at me. She looked up, her violet eyes a wreck. He used her shoulder. He used every last burning cell of his will. He pushed himself up. He was bleeding, his life pouring onto the stone, but he rose. He rose to one knee, a dying man, a broken ghost. He looked at the assembly. He saw the pikes. He saw Varaios, his face twisted in triumph. He saw Taylor, her face a mask of grief. He turned back to Kaelira. He raised his bloody, shaking hand. He touched her face, his thumb smearing a streak of red across her perfect, pale skin. And then, in the absolute stunned silence of the great hall, in front of the entire Ravari dynasty, he gently, deliberately, patted the top of her head. Once, the Kaelinvor, the sound of Taylor, the high matriarch, dropping to her knees echoed in the silence. She did not kneel to her daughter. She knelt to him. Then, a sound like thunder, one by one, then in dozens, then in hundreds, then in thousands. The assembly fell. The clang of plasma pikes and shock blades hitting the stone floor was a single deafening wave of surrender. The Silver Guard, the High Circle, the human delegation, confused, terrified, followed suit. The entire hall knelt. They were not kneeling to the princess who had failed. They were kneeling to the alien who had claimed her, the unmarked warrior who had invoked the oldest, most sacred law of the Ravari, the law of the consort. The law that said he was now sacred. Varaios was the only one left standing, his sword raised, his face a mask of total horrified disbelief. "No, no, stand up, she is, he is." "The old law is invoked," Taylor's voice rang out, rising from her knees. "The unmarked has claimed the bloodline. He has passed the trial. He is real sovereign, sacred consort." She pointed a single shaking finger at her nephew. "Arrest this traitor." The Silver Guards, their loyalty now absolute, surged forward. Varayo screamed, a high, thin sound, as they dragged him down, his energy katana clattering to the stone. Kaylira just stared at Logan, her eyes wide, her tears stopped. Logan looked at her, his duty done. "See?" he whispered, a bloody smile touching his lips. "Told you." His eyes rolled back, and he pitched forward into her arms, unconscious. That night, the twin moons shone into the High Matriarch's healing chamber. Logan was alive, barely. His entire side was a mass of regenerated, synthesized flesh. He woke, and Kaylira was there, asleep in a chair by his bed, her hand clutching his. The next day, she entered his room. She was dressed not in robes, but in sleek, black command armor. She was no longer a princess. She was the acting head of the dynasty. "They are making arrangements," she said, her voice quiet. She wouldn't look at him. "What kind of arrangements?" "A bonding ceremony, a coronation. They are offering you rulership of the entire dynasty, with me as your sworn consort." She looked at him, her violet eyes troubled. "They are offering me to you as your prize." Logan slowly, painfully sat up. He swung his legs over the side of the bed. He stood, wincing, and walked to her. He was still a scarred, broken man. "I'm not a ruler," he said, his voice rough. "I'm not a consort. I'm just a guy who got lost." "What do you want, Logan?" she whispered. He reached up, his hand scarred, his fingers gentle. He touched the side of her face. "I don't want a throne. I don't want a planet. I don't want a prize." He leaned in, his gaze unwavering. "I just want you." He kissed her, and it was not the kiss of a king, or a consort, or a savior. It was the kiss of a man who had been a ghost for 10 years, and had finally found a reason to be alive. That night, in her own ancestral chambers, they came together. There was no desperation, no survival, no fear. The bond between them was a calm, deep, steady river of light. They made love not as a prince and princess, not as a master and servant, but as two scarred, broken warriors who had somehow, against all odds, found a home in each other. Afterward, they lay tangled in the silver moonlight, her head on his scarred chest, his arms around her. Her bioluminescent skin was pulsing, a soft, slow, peaceful rhythm that matched his heart. "My clan was wrong," she whispered, her fingers tracing the new pink scar on his side. "We saw you as an outsider, an ape. Simple." She rose up on one elbow, her white hair cascading around them. She kissed his chest, just over his heart. "But they are the ones who are simple. They are the ones who were blind." She looked up, her violet eyes the most beautiful things he had ever seen. Holding him. "You have given me more than my freedom, Logan. You gave me more than my crown." A single perfect tear traced its way down her cheek. "You gave me you." He pulled her down, and he held her. And in the silent heart of the mountain, under the light of the twin moons, the ghost of a soldier was finally laid to rest. Weeks later, the great hall of the Ravari ancestors was not a court of judgment, but a chamber of reform. The silence was still heavy, but it was the silence of a species holding its breath, waiting for the new world to be born. Kaylira stood in the center, not in robes, but in the black command armor of her new station. She was no longer just a princess, she was the de facto ruler, the architect of a new age, with her mother, Taylor, at her side, and beside her, as always, stood Logan. He wore no armor, no crown, just simple, clean fatigues. He was a silent, scarred pillar, and his very presence gave her words an unshakable foundation. "The caste system is broken," Kalira announced, her voice, amplified by her own will, reaching every corner. "It was a tool of the old order, a tool Varaios used to divide us. The unmarked, the tainted, the servitor. These are labels of fear. From this day, there is only one title, Ravari." A deep murmur of protest came from the high circle, the old blood nobles whose entire lives were built on those labels. "You cannot erase 5,000 years of tradition," one old lord protested, his voice shaking with indignation. "I can," Kalira said, her voice cutting through his. "And I will. The traditions that gave us Varaios are traditions of weakness. They taught us to fear the outsider, to fear the different. And in doing so, we became blind." She turned, her gaze softening as it fell on Logan. "We were taught to fear the unmarked, those born without the gifts of the first dynasty. Yet it was an unmarked human who passed the matriarch's trial. It was an unmarked warrior who fought with no augmentations and won. It was this unmarked man who reminded us of our oldest, truest law." She looked back at the assembly, her violet eyes blazing. "Our strength is not in our purity, it is in our honor. And there is no honor in slavery. The caste system is abolished. All Ravari are free, that is the new law." Taylor, from her throne, nodded once, her face a mask of iron pride. "The new law is spoken, it is done." The high circle was silent. They did not cheer. But they did not protest again. They had seen what this new, bonded power could do. Logan, however, wanted no part of the power. He had refused every title. The assembly had tried to name him Rail Sovereign, Lord Consort, First Blade. He had refused them all. To the high circle, he was a frustrating enigma. To the common people, he was a living legend. To Kalira, he was just Logan. He found his purpose not in the throne room, but in the dust of the training yards. He stood in the high-altitude arena, the red sun of Ravari Prime beating down. Before him stood 24 young Ravari, the first generation of warriors who had grown up in the shadow of Varaios, taught that might was everything. "Again," Logan said, his voice a quiet command. Two of the youths, both tall and powerful, lunged at him. They were fast, their movements fluid and aggressive. They expected him to counter, to break them. Logan didn't. He simply moved. He used their own momentum, their own strength, against them. He sidestepped. He parried. He redirected. He didn't strike a single blow. In less than 10 seconds, the two young warriors were a tangled heap on the ground, breathing hard, their pride wounded. "You are strong," Logan said, walking among them. He helped one of them to his feet. "You are fast, and you are sloppy. You fight with your rage. That is a weapon your opponent can use against you. Varaios taught you that. He was wrong." He looked at all of them, his gray eyes missing nothing. "Your strength is not in your armor. It is not in your augmentations. It is not in your plasma pike." He tapped his own temple. "It is here." Then he tapped his chest, over his heart. "And it is here. Honor," he said, the word simple. "Restraint. You are Ravari. That means you are the most dangerous warriors in this sector. It is your duty to be in control, to choose when to fight, and more importantly, when not to. True strength is not breaking your enemy. It is not letting your enemy break you. Now, again." He taught them the lessons of Krelix 7. He taught them the discipline of a ghost, and they, in turn, began to see him not as a human ape, but as a master. The new era was not just internal. Kailira, with Taylor's counsel and Logan's steady presence, had begun to heal the forbidden worlds. Virelia 9, the sacred moon, was opened, not to miners, but to botanists, scientists, and historians, both Ravari and humans. The crystal caverns were studied, not exploited. The ruins of Orinth were preserved. The human diplomats, the same ones who had conspired with Varios, were now in a genuine negotiation. They sat at a table with Kailira and her mother, their faces humbled. They had seen Varios's full plan. They knew he had intended to annihilate their fleet. They had been saved, not by their own military, but by a disgraced, exiled captain they had thrown away a decade earlier. The alliance was forged, not on a trade of tech for fuel, but on a promise of mutual defense and shared knowledge. The Earth off-world wars had officially, finally, ended. But peace, Logan knew, was just the short, quiet breath between storms. The intelligence briefing was in Taylor's private solar. The High Matriarch looked grim. The bond is a new thing in the galaxy. A human and a Ravari, psychically and biologically linked. A bridge between two of the most powerful and mistrusted species in the sector. She activated a holographic chart. The stars swirled, and new, red vectors appeared. The other empires have noticed, Taylor said, her voice cold. The Krelix hegemony, the Xylot dominion, even the traders of the Gyre, they do not see an alliance. They see a threat, a fusion, a new, hybrid power block that could upset the balance. The chart zoomed in. Krelix fleets are massing on our borders. The Xylot are claiming our trade routes. They are testing us. They believe this new era of honor is a weakness. They believe love has made us soft. Then we will show them what this love can do, Kailira said, her voice pure iron. She stepped to the chart, her mind so closely linked to Logan's, now possessed a sharp, tactical edge. They expect us to build a bigger fleet, she said. They expect us to raise our shields to prepare for a new war. That is the old way. That is Varios's way. She looked at her mother, then at Logan. The bond between them hummed with her sudden, brilliant idea. We will do the one thing they cannot predict, she said. We will not raise our shields. We will lower them. We will invite them. Taylor looked confused. Invite them? To what? Daughter? Our execution? To a new council, Kailira said, her light pulsing. An interspecies summit, not a negotiation for territory, but a meeting of cultures. We will show them, face to face, that our bond is not a threat, but a promise, a new way. They will never come, Taylor argued. The Krelix hegemony has not spoken to an inferior species in 1,000 years. They will come, Kailira insisted, because they are curious. They are afraid. And we will send an ambassador they cannot possibly ignore. She turned to Logan. He had known it was coming. He felt it build in her mind, a wave of logic, love, and terrifying responsibility. The great hall was full once more. The announcement had been made, a new interspecies council, a first step toward a true galactic federation. And the Ravari dynasty would send its first, its prime ambassador. This is a sacred Ravari duty, a High Lord said, rising. It must be one of the first blood. I nominate Lord Kyber of the High Circle. A wise choice, another agreed. His honor is pure. His honor is old, Kailira said from the throne. And this is a new world. The ambassador for this mission cannot just be Ravari. He must be more. He must be a bridge. He must be a man who understands both our ancient honor and the complex, broken heart of the outsider galaxy. She stood, and her violet eyes scanned the crowd, finally landing on the one man who stood in the shadows, his arms crossed, watching. "I name my chosen," she said, her voice ringing with absolute authority. "I name the man who has passed the matriarch's trial. I name the man who is Ravari in his soul, and human in his blood. I name the man who is the living embodiment of the bond we seek to forge. My name is Logan Rourke." A storm of protest, of shock, of disbelief. A human, an ape. To speak for the dynasty? Logan stepped from the shadows. He walked to the center of the hall, to the very spot where he had bled, where he had fallen, and where he had risen. He looked up at Kaylira. The bond between them was a silent, powerful conversation. "You ask this of me?" Her gaze was unwavering. "I trust no one else." He turned to the assembly. His voice was not the boom of a politician. It was the quiet, rough gravel of a soldier. "I am not a prince," he said, and the hall fell silent. "I am not a lord. I am not even Ravari. But I was a soldier," he continued. "For a government I no longer trust, I was an exile in a galaxy I did not understand, and now I am a consort to a woman I would die for." He looked at the shocked faces of the high circle. "You do not know the Krelliks. I do. I fought them. You do not know the Xylot. I do. I've drunk with them. You do not know the desperation of the human-run territories. I do. I am from them." He turned back to Kaylira. "You want a bridge? You have one. I accept." Their final night. It was agony. The Varelia, a new class star cruiser, a hybrid of sleek Ravari lines and powerful Earth off-world engines, sat waiting on the launch pad. His bags, a single duffel, were by the door. He stood on the balcony of their chamber, watching the twin moons. He felt her enter. The bond hummed, a low, aching thrum of sorrow, pride, and a deep, profound love. She came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist, pressing her face against his scarred back. Her light pulsed, a slow, gentle warmth against his skin. "Do not go," she whispered, her voice a small, broken thing he had never heard before. "I will send Kyber. I will send anyone. I need you here." Logan turned in her embrace, his arms coming around her. He held her, his scarred hands tangling in her white silk hair. He saw the tears shining in her violet eyes. "You are the High Lord of the dynasty. Kaylira," he said, his voice rough. "You are the strongest person I have ever known. You do not need me. You stood up to your entire clan. You faced down Varios. You are rebuilding your world. And you," she whispered, her hand clutching the front of his shirt, "you are my world. The bond, Logan, what will I do? To be this far from you, it will ache." "It will ache for me, too," he said, his own voice tight. "More than you know." He took her face in his hands. "I am a ghost. Kaylira, I've been one for 10 years. You are the first thing, the only thing, that has made me feel alive. You are my anchor. But an anchor can't stay in the harbor. It has to go. It has to do its job." He kissed her, a long, slow, desperate kiss. It was not a kiss of passion, but of sealing a vow. "No matter how far I go," he whispered, his forehead pressed against hers. "No matter what stars I see, I belong to you. From the moment I touched your head, I am yours. Always." That night, they did not make love. They were in love. It was not a physical act, but a psychic one. A deep, total merging. It was raw, romantic, and so emotional it left them both breathless. It was a final, desperate reinforcement of the bond, a conscious weaving of their souls together, storing up the feeling of oneness to last for the cold, empty light years that were coming. In the morning, in the cold blue light, he was dressed. He stood at the door. She stopped him, her hand on his chest. They will test you, the Krelix, the Xylot. They will be cruel. They will see you as a pet. I've been called worse, he said, a faint smile touching his lips. Do not let them break you, Logan, she whispered, her eyes fierce. They can't, he said. I'm already yours. She rose up on her toes and she didn't kiss his lips. She kissed his chest, just over his heart. He felt the heat of her lips, a searing electric touch. He knew, in the bond, that she was imagining her handprint, her claim, glowing there, a secret, invisible shield. Then go, she whispered, her voice finally steady, a queen once more. Go teach the stars what love really means. He nodded, he turned, and he walked away. The bridge of the Varelia was silent, lit only by the soft blue glow of the star chart. Logan sat in the captain's chair, alone. He wore the simple dark blue uniform of the new Interspecies Council. It was clean, unscarred. Ambassador, the ship's calm, synthetic voice said, we are ready for departure. The course is laid in for the Krelix hegemony. Logan didn't answer. He looked at his hand. On his console, a small holopick activated. It was Kaylira. She was not in her armor, or her robes. She was as he had last seen her in their chamber, her white hair unbound, a small, soft, private smile on her face, a smile just for him. Her light, her love, her entire world, captured in a frame. He stared at the image for a long, quiet moment, his heart aching, but full. Ambassador Rourke, the ship asked, orders? Logan looked up from the image, his gaze lifting to the viewport, to the endless swirling sea of stars. They were no longer a cold, empty void. They were a destination. He turned to the stars, now not just a soldier, not a ghost, but a man who changed the galaxy by touching a woman's heart and her head. Take us out, he said.